My sister told me, "You always embarrass yourself when you speak." So I stayed silent at her bridal shower. Then her fiancé joked, "I wish you were the one I met first." The room fell silent, and she threw the cake at me. Delia and I grew up in Kingston, New York. Small town vibes, big family opinions. Our mom, Doreen, worked at a bank and carried herself like someone who believed she'd been born into the wrong class of people. My dad left when I was 12. Delia was 8. He left behind a garage full of his tools, a note about needing to find himself, and a quiet sort of grief that neither of us ever really talked about. From then on, Delia was the one who shined. Maybe it was her way of coping, or maybe she was just born to be adored. She did cheerleading, ran for student government, got into a private college in Boston, and landed a job planning high-end events before she was 25. Every milestone came with a photo shoot. Every story she told had perfect lighting. Me? I stayed behind. Took care of mom when her knees went bad. Got a job managing a bookstore in uptown Kingston. I liked it. It was small, but it smelled like old pages and fresh coffee. I'd started saving to one day turn it into something more, a cafe, maybe, or a book club hub for local women, but that dream sat on a shelf for years. Delia and I never really fought. We just drifted. She'd send a text here and there. A holiday card with her name printed in gold. She came home for Thanksgiving once every 3 years. That was the rhythm of our relationship, occasional, surface level, polite. So when she called to tell me she was getting married to a guy named Kyle, I was surprised. More surprised when she asked me to come to her bridal shower. And stunned when she greeted me at the door like she was already bracing for impact. "Don't say too much," she said again, like she was giving advice to a child. "Just, enjoy it." So I did exactly that. I sat at a corner table, sipped my drink, smiled when appropriate, and kept my mouth shut. Her friends buzzed around her like bees to a queen. They told stories from college, giggled over bachelorette trip photos, and complimented everything from the table centerpieces to her toenail polish. I watched like a ghost at her party. At one point, her friend Lucy stood up to give a toast. It was emotional and a little over the top, all about how Delia was the most radiant soul she'd ever met. People clapped. Someone cried. Delia glanced at me. Just for a second. I recognized the look. It said, "Don't ruin this." So I didn't. Then Kyle showed up. He walked in wearing hospital scrubs under his jacket and apologized for being late. Everyone cooed at how hard he worked. How lucky Delia was. He was charming. That brand of educated, well-spoken handsome that made older women squeeze their wine glasses tighter. He made his rounds, and eventually, he got to me. "You must be Maura," he said, shaking my hand. "Delia's told me." "Well, actually, she hasn't told me much." I smiled. "Probably for the best." He laughed. "You know, I kinda wish I'd met you first." And just like that, the air in the room changed. Everyone froze. Delia was across the room, holding a plate. I looked at her, and I saw it, the anger rising fast and hot. She didn't speak. She just picked up the cake, the beautiful, layered lemon raspberry cake, and flung it at me like she'd been waiting for an excuse. It hit me square on the shoulder, cream and crumbs sliding down my arm. A few gasps echoed. Someone's wine glass hit the floor. No one moved. I just stood there, stunned. I hadn't said a word. Not one. And still, somehow, I had managed to be the villain. Delia stormed upstairs. Her best friend ran after her. Kyle stood there with his mouth half open, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. I cleaned myself up in the guest bathroom and drove home without saying goodbye. The next day, Mom called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just sighed and said, "You really should have just stayed home." I laughed. Actually laughed. She threw a cake at me, Mom. She was under a lot of stress. You know how emotional brides can be. That was the moment something broke. Not like glass shattering. More like a slow, steady snap of something that had been strained for too long. Maybe if she didn't spend her life trying to silence people, she wouldn't be so emotional. Maura, she warned. No, I said. I'm done being the one who takes it. And I meant it. But that wasn't the end of it. Kyle called me a few days later. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. Hey, he said, quiet. I wanted to apologize. That joke I made, it was stupid. I didn't mean anything by it. Did you know she'd react like that? He hesitated. Honestly? She's been on edge. About everything. I thought maybe if I loosened the mood, you thought implying you wanted her sister would loosen the mood? Yeah. Okay. It sounds worse when you say it. It wasn't even that he said it. It was that it revealed something deeper. The cracks in their relationship. The instability Delia had been trying so hard to hide with peonies and curated playlists and cakes that cost more than my rent. I didn't tell anyone about the call. I didn't need more drama. But weeks went by, and then months. And the silence grew. The wedding still happened. I wasn't invited. Mom went, of course. She told people I was sick. I wasn't sick. I was tired. Tired of showing up for people who only ever asked me to be smaller. Quieter. Easier. So I didn't show up at all. The silence between Delia and me solidified into something permanent, or at least it felt that way. Months went by. I heard updates secondhand, mostly from our mother, who acted like the cake incident had been a shared hallucination we were all supposed to forget. You two will come around, she said once, when I stopped by to drop off groceries. You're sisters. But I didn't feel like we were. Not anymore. Not in any way that mattered. Delia and Kyle went on their honeymoon to Greece. I only knew that because she posted a few curated shots on her Instagram. She didn't tag me, of course. She never had. I might as well have been invisible. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the bookstore. I started working longer hours, fixing up the back room, repainting the old window trim. Something about the physical labor helped, scraping off old paint, sanding, redoing things by hand. Like I was rebuilding more than just walls. Like I was quietly reassembling myself. I applied for a local grant to help small businesses expand. It was something I'd looked at before, but always talked myself out of. This time, I submitted the application without overthinking it. A month later, I got it. $15,000. Enough to turn the tiny bookstore into something real, something new. I bought secondhand furniture, added a coffee bar, and rearranged the shelves to make room for community tables. I put up flyers around town and posted on local Facebook groups. We reopened that fall under the name Chapter House. The first night we hosted a poetry reading, 27 people showed up. Some sat on the floor. It was loud, imperfect, full of warmth. I didn't tell my family. Not right away. Then, one afternoon in early December, the door jingled open, and there she was. Delia. No warning. No text. Just there, standing in the doorway in her camel coat and heels, her makeup perfect as always. For a second, I thought she'd just walked into the wrong place by accident. Then she looked at me. "This is yours?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. It is." She looked around slowly, at the shelves, the coffee counter, the little sign by the register that read, "Every voice matters." "It's nice," she said. And for once, it didn't sound like a compliment wrapped in criticism. "Thanks." She lingered. I braced myself for something, an apology, maybe. A confrontation. Instead, she said, "I'm not here to fight." "Okay. I don't know. Been thinking about you." I didn't answer. I was afraid if I said anything, the walls would go up again. So I let the silence sit between us. I messed up, she said eventually, adjusting her scarf even though it wasn't cold. That day. And probably a lot before it, too. It caught me off guard, hearing her say it. I waited for the but, the excuse, the twist. It didn't come. I don't know why I did that, she added. I think I was scared. Of everything falling apart. And you were always just there. Calm. Collected. People like you scare people like me. I laughed, short and bitter. You've spent your whole life trying to shut me up. I know, she said. Quiet. I know. There was a long pause. I thought of all the things I could say. All the memories, all the small humiliations. The birthdays forgotten, the times she cut me off mid-sentence, the way she'd looked through me like I was a placeholder in our family. But I didn't want to pour all that out here, in the middle of the store, with the espresso machine hissing and a couple at the window flipping through poetry books. So I just said, it wasn't about what you did that day. It was about everything before it. She nodded slowly. I figured. Then, almost shyly, she said, I left him. Kyle. My breath caught. What? A month ago. It just wasn't working. I think he never really wanted to be with someone like me. Not long term. And I couldn't stop thinking about what he said that day. You think he meant it? I don't know. Maybe not. But the fact that I couldn't not think about it, that says something, doesn't it? It did. But I didn't say it. Delia's shoulders sagged, just slightly. I guess I thought if I was perfect enough, things would stick. That people would stay. That I could control it. But I couldn't. I couldn't even keep my own husband. You couldn't control me either. No, she said. I couldn't. She didn't stay long after that. Just long enough to buy a book, some random memoir she picked off a shelf. When she handed me her card, she looked me in the eye and said, I hope you're happy. I mean it. And for the first time in years, I almost believed her. When she left, I stood by the register for a long time, staring at the door. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to call Mom, scream about everything, about how I'd always been the one who stayed quiet while everyone else exploded. But I didn't. Instead, I turned off the espresso machine, dimmed the lights, and locked the door. The store was warm. The shelves full. The silence felt different now, not something forced, but something chosen. And that made all the difference. Weeks passed after Delia's visit. She didn't reach out again. I didn't either. But something shifted after she left, like the page had turned without us even realizing it. Mom showed up a few days later, carrying a Tupperware of cranberry bread and her usual blend of unsolicited judgment. I saw your sister the other day, she said, placing the container on the counter like a peace offering. She told me you two talked. I nodded. She's going through a rough time, Maura. You could stand to show a little grace. I nearly laughed. Grace? I said. That's all I've ever shown her. Mom pursed her lips, but didn't argue. Instead, she glanced around the bookstore, taking in the changes she'd ignored up to this point. It's nice, she muttered. Thanks. Then came the kicker. She said Kyle's living in Boston now. Got transferred. She's staying with a friend in Beacon. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I felt nothing at all. No satisfaction. No sorrow. Just distance. I was finally out from under her orbit, and that freedom was its own kind of high. But that didn't mean I was done. A few months after that conversation, I got a notification on Facebook. A local women's networking group I joined was holding a spring conference. Panels, speakers, workshops. And guess who had been listed as the keynote speaker? Delia. She was slated to present a talk called Rebuilding Yourself After the Fall. I actually snorted when I read it. Classic Delia. Always finding a spotlight. Always branding her chaos into something inspirational. But then something odd caught my eye. She had listed herself as a small business owner. I tilted my head and clicked the profile link to her name. She'd started her own business as a life transition consultant. I didn't even know what that meant. Her bio claimed she worked with high-achieving women navigating difficult crossroads. No mention of the marriage. No mention of the breakdown. Just a photo of her holding a cup of tea, staring thoughtfully out a window. And then, this little line: my resilience was tested when my family failed me in a time of celebration. I came out stronger, more self-aware, and determined to help others do the same. My stomach dropped. She was using the bridal shower cake incident as part of her brand. Framed as if I had ruined her special moment. As if she'd risen from the ashes of my imagined wreck. That's when I decided, enough. Now, I didn't want to burn her to the ground. That was never my style. But I did want the truth to breathe a little. I wanted the real version to finally step out of the shadow she'd always thrown over me. So, I submitted my own proposal to the conference. A panel called, Quiet Women, Loud Rooms, The Power in Being Underestimated. I didn't mention Delia by name. I didn't need to. The people who mattered, the organizers, the attendees, would put the pieces together. To my surprise, they accepted. I spent weeks preparing my story. Not just about the cake. But about all of it, the years of being told to stay quiet, to be the safe one, the good one, the background support in everyone else's narrative. I talked about how I turned silence into something purposeful. How I created a space for voices like mine to grow and thrive. The night before the event, I barely slept. I imagined walking on stage and freezing. Imagined her in the front row, arms crossed, smug as ever. But when I got there and stepped behind the podium, the lights weren't blinding. They were warm. Familiar. I began. My name is Maura. For most of my life, I was told I was too much when I spoke and not enough when I didn't. I spent decades playing the part of the quiet sister. The one who knew when to disappear. Until I realized that silence isn't always a gift, it's often a symptom of being dismissed. The room was still. Some people leaned in. A few took notes. I want to talk about what happens when you stop being the background and start being the author of your own story. Afterward, the applause was generous. A woman in her 50s hugged me with tears in her eyes. That could have been me, she whispered. Thank you. Delia was nowhere to be seen. Either she'd come to the earlier sessions and left, or she'd skipped it entirely. I thought that would be the end. But 2 days later, I got an email. Subject: just saw your panel. Wow. It was from one of the event organizers. She said she'd attended Delia's keynote, then my panel the next day. She said it was clear who I had been referring to, though I'd never used a name. She said, funny thing is, when I watched her speak, something didn't sit right. But your story? Yours rang true. And then the kicker, she mentioned she was helping organize a national conference in DC later that year, and would I consider being a featured speaker? That email? That was my quiet revenge. Not through cruelty. Not through confrontation. But by finally being heard. Word traveled fast in our small corner of the world. My bookstore's foot traffic doubled after the panel video went semi-viral in the local circles. Women stopped by just to say thanks. To sit. To be seen. It became more than a shop, it became a refuge. Delia? She went silent again. For a while, she kept posting motivational content. But I noticed the tone changed. Less polished. More uncertain. A few months later, her website disappeared. Then her coaching page. Then her presence altogether. We haven't spoken since. Mom still tries. She'll say things like, you two really should patch things up. You're both so stubborn. But now, I just smile. I'm not stubborn. I'm just done apologizing for growing. She doesn't know what to say to that. And that's fine. I didn't need an apology from Delia. I just needed the truth to breathe. And now that it has, I'll never let it suffocate again.